Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Gliding o'er all, through nature, time, and space. As a ship on the waters advancing, the voyage of the soul, not life alone. Death, many deaths I'll sing. Welcome back to Breaking into Breaking Bad, Season 5, Episode 8, Gliding Over All. I will do us the honors of recapping this episode for those of you who have not seen it in a while. So this is a pretty action-packed episode. Lots going on in it, and it's got a kind of thriller action movie feel to it. So this is the one in which Walt is able to somehow orchestrate the killing of all of Mike's guys who, without their hazard pay, they are now liable to flip on him. And he is able, through his network, through Todd's uncle in the prison system, to be able to have them all murdered within a 2-minute period in, I guess, different prisons. And it's quite the thing. But the episode begins with a bit of anxiety as they're not really sure what they're going to do now that they know that these guys are liabilities. And then the episode kind of peaks when Walt is able to secure their murder and seems to then come down, and Walt seems to be in charge of everything. And they're safe and sound now. They've secured their safety, as it were. Walt can walk away safely. He can take his money and retire after Skyler basically shows him that he's confronted with the fact that they have more money than they would have a lifetime to be able to spend, and they know not what to do with it. And it's just undeniable now that there's no money reason to do this anymore. And I don't know if Walt reconsiders the empire business he says he was in, but he is persuaded, maybe given the more violence that has to be done that he said wasn't going to have to happen, to hang it all up. And then the episode ends on a very chilling note, I'll say, when just as Walt thinks everything is safe, we see the family all back together. The kids are back at home, and they're sitting out in the back deck at Walt's house with Hank and Marie, just like old times. And then Hank finds Walt's copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, which was gifted to him by Gail Bedecker. And I guess this was the end of a season, right? So it ends on this note of where it looks pretty clear that Hank is going to figure it out, that it was Walt all along as Heisenberg. And then credits roll, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, so that was the end of part 1 for season 5, and it probably was like a year, maybe a year and a half for part 2 to come back, but it felt like a good 10 years if you were watching this live, if you remember.
I can't imagine. I really can't imagine. So really, it's the end of. I mean, it's really 6 seasons, right? I don't know why they call it part 1 of season 5 and part 2, but that's the way they do. So this is essentially the end of that pseudo season. Well, let's start with the title. So it's called Gliding Over All. I did us the honors at the beginning of the episode of reading a poem from Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass titled Gliding Over All. And it's a kind of a weird poem. It's really short, and it's about sort of the voyage of the soul, gliding over all. And that's where the title comes from. So did you know that, Cabes?
I did not know that, actually. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seemed obvious that there wasn't a clear reference.
I was wondering where you were going with starting out with the poem.
Yeah, and I just felt inspired. You know? Yeah. I could have told you that I wrote it. Yeah, that's poem 271 from Leaves of Grass. So that's the title. So let's move into the intro. So the intro is just as enigmatic, I guess, as the title. It starts focusing on a fly yet again, and on that lands on Walt's desk lamp, and Walt just follows it around the room with his eye. What did you make of that?
To me, it looked like he was staring the fly down in remembrance of the Great Fly episode, and remembering. Just my opinion. He was almost looked like he was remembering how it was taken up everything about him. He couldn't think, he couldn't do anything until this fly was dealt with, and he was able to actually snap out of it this time when he saw the fly. And some of that was Todd had just walked in, needing to deal with some things that they were working on, and he was able to snap out of it this time. So it was a little bit of, hello, old friend.
Yeah, I like that though, because it seems like you're saying he had a victory overcoming himself and his obsessions in the past, where before he wouldn't be able to let it go, but now he just lets it go.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely means something. I mean, the writers put it in there. It's just too weird for it to be senseless. So,
well, do you remember with the fly episode, he was really struggling with the guilt of Jane and trying to explain all that to Jesse.
That's right.
And this one, you would think that he would have a lot of guilt on his mind to discuss, and he was able to get over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Yeah. Because I mean, with Jane, it was a crime, a sin of omission, right? Like he failed to act to save her. But in this instance, he had pulled out the gun and shot Mike. That's a sin of commission. It's an act that he did as opposed to just not acting. So Todd walks in, and Todd's been disassembling, I guess, or dealing with the car. That's right. He had disposed of the car, and now they have to deal with Mike's body. And we've seen this before when they had to acid, I guess we can verb that noun, when they acid the boy's body, the little boy. Mm-hmm. And it's just very earthy, and you're just kind of confronted with the messy side of it. It's not just a clean, yeah, he shot him, and in the movies so many times people kill people and then that's it. Like you don't have to deal with the actually cleaning up the body, but it makes you just come face to face with what you've done. So Walt's, yeah, like you said, he's dealing with it, but he doesn't seem to be really wrestling with it. He kind of just moves on. So as he's doing that, I guess shortly thereafter, Jesse walks in, and Jesse has heard about Mike's guys and how they're a liability now. And he comes to Walt and says, what are we going to do about it? And Walt cuts him off and he says, we. There is no we. I'm the only vote left, and I'll handle it. I was trying to think, is he trying to make Jesse feel left out as a way of trying to maybe bring him back in? Or is he just resentful? Is he just being, abrupt and like, yeah, it's not your problem. You're out. So I don't need your input. I don't want your vote. I'm the king now.
Yeah. And you could tell Jesse almost was not even really wanting to deal with it at all. He was just like, whatever, man, type of approach. He just was hoping to kind of come together to form a plan, and it didn't seem like it was going to go that way. So he was like, I barked up the wrong tree on this one. Right.
Anyway, that's how the intro ends. That's it. So there's the fly, there's the dealing with Mike's body, and then there's this strange confrontation with Jesse. So that's the intro. Then the show proper begins right away with the guy who used to was the manager of the laundromat back when Gus was running the lab under there, who clearly knew a lot of information, a lot of dirt, and who had been receiving pay. And so the scene opens with him with his lawyer, and he's ready to deal with Hank in exchange for information. He wants, a lot. He wants to be able to go free and all this, which is exactly what you'd think. He's feeling powerful, but Hank plays really hardball, and he's like, "No, we're not going to give you." He's like, "We'll maybe reduce your prison sentence a little bit, but we're not going to let you just go." And when the guy balks, Hank says, "Look, I got 8 other guys." And we've talked about this a couple times before, but there's this psychological phenomenon literally known as the prisoner's dilemma, where you're in a situation where Hank does exactly right. He gets in that guy's head and he says, "You don't know which one of those other 8 guys is going to offer me a better deal, but probably one of them is." And so he can get them all playing on their fear. So, no, okay, fine. Well, just give me one little thing, and then I'll be the guy that flips. Right? They're all eager to do that, and so I think Hank makes the right move. In hindsight, we see that cost him some time, and that's all the time that Walt needed to be able to pull off this mass execution of all the guys before Hank can get to any of them. But it's pretty clear from his perspective, he's holding all the cards. He's got all the power, all the leverage.
Yeah,
and
once
he can name his
they
price.
took out the lawyer's hazard pay, he knew that was the only thing that was keeping him quiet.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if it, in hindsight, again, it's 2020. It's like, wow, that's all that was holding everybody back. Like, that's pretty flimsy of a plan.
These were Mike's guys. They were all vetted, and they
were all vetted. Yeah, but I mean, they're not stupid. They're not in it for the cause. And this gets back to a fundamental issue from the very beginning about men who are involved in injustice, like organized crime. What's going to keep them from turning on each other,
right,
when their interest is to do so? It was only their interest keeping them together to begin with. And so there's no lofty principle that they're serving. There's no cause. There's no like country that they die for. I mean, no, they're completely in it for themselves.
Right.
And so they're up for the highest bidder. And it used to be Mike, and now it's Hank who can maybe offer them something.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, classic move. But again, we learn afterward that was a mistake on Hank's part. But I don't know if we can really call it a mistake, because he couldn't have known that Walt was able to pull off what he was able to pull off.
Yeah, it's 3 separate prisons within 2 minutes of each other. There's just brilliant writing.
Yeah, it really was. So we remember right after Walt shot Mike, he realizes, I could have gotten the names from Lydia, and he that makes him feel like, oh man, I just shot Mike for no reason. But anyway, so he does that. He goes to Lydia, and he wants the names, and it's fascinating just how human all of this is. And I guess what I mean by that is it's really raw human interest and calculation. Like I said, there's no high principles that anyone's sort of thinking or operating in, or some noble cause. Every character is out for their own good.
Yep.
And Lydia, I don't know. I mean, Lydia seems pretty smart, honestly. Like, she knows exactly how close she came to getting killed earlier, and the only reason she wasn't killed, it wasn't because somebody was going to protect her because she's a woman or anything like that. No. She was protected because she was useful, and she knows the minute she's no longer useful, she's just going to be another name on Walt's list of people to kill.
And she put 2 and 2 together that Mike was no longer a factor.
Right.
Coming for those names. Yeah,
and help me remember, like, she says something to the effect of, Mike was the guy who like protected me, and now he's gone. Right? No. Mike was going to kill her. That's right. Mike was the one that was going to try and kill her. And it's Walt that says, no, she might be useful to us.
Right. I mean, I put in quotes that she said that Mike is no longer a factor.
Yeah.
So at that point, she knew that her only course was to and this was the really smart part, was to really go at Walt's ego.
Hmm.
And that was to make him
Interesting.
in Europe.
Yeah, right. We can sell this stuff. What is it? Czech Republic? Is that where she wants to sell it all? Yeah. And she's not bluffing. Like, she had thought it all through. She knew all the right people. There really was a market, I guess, in the Czech Republic for blue meth. What was a dark comedic moment is when she basically confronts Walt with this logic of, like, I realize that if I give these names to you, you're going to kill me. And Walt's like, I would never do that. Like, right here in public, that's crazy. And he mocks her for it, right? And then afterwards, when she gives him the names, and she, like you said, she plays to his ego and says, I can make you a ton of money by selling this to the people in Czech Republic. And then he gets up later and we see he's got the ricin pack that he was going to slip into her coffee or something. I mean, it was like, yeah, no, you are exactly right, Lydia. He really was going to just kill you basically right here in public. I mean, it would have had its effects later on, but he was going to do it right then, right there. And he had it. I think he had the intention of doing that.
Right. In his mind, if this whole thing with Czech Republic wasn't going to be an issue, she was just another loose end. He didn't need her for anything. They already have the methylamine. They don't need her for anything else.
Right. That little packet of ricin. So, I mean, let's just remember, he and Jesse made that to kill Gus way, way back. Mm-hmm. And yet he's kept this little poison packet. In spite of all the times he's told Jesse and he's told himself, no more violence. Like, we're done. We're not going to have to do this anymore. Well, why are you keeping the ricin? What is that for, Walt? Well, rainy day, you never know when you're going to need to poison somebody,
Right. And it even shows him going back to his house
exactly.
and hiding it in a brilliant spot, by the way. Do you remember where he hid it?
Yeah, in the electrical outlet. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, totally where I would hide the ricin. Yeah, it's good.
That's where I hide mine.
Yeah. Well, now I know. Well, so that tells us that he's still thinking, well, I never know when I'm going to need this, so I'm going to keep it. And I'll come back for it some other time, I guess, and we'll see. But that's where Walt. So it's cutthroat. Everything is just very Machiavellian. Everyone's completely playing according to their interest, and these players who are surviving are playing the game well. Lydia's playing it well. Walt's playing it well. So now he's got the list of names, and he decides he's going to go. And Todd had mentioned before that he had an uncle who was connected and had been in prison or something. And so now Walt knows that his only option, I mean, am I right? Like, I guess he could flee, but that's not really going to work. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to sort of slide back into his easy suburban life. And so he's going to have to do the violent thing.
Right. And he's very confident when negotiating with Todd's uncle as well. Even though these guys look really rough, he's just completely unfazed by it.
Right.
Even the uncle was like, it can be done, just not the way you want it. And he said, of course it could be done. Just because I said so, or something of that nature.
Yeah. Sorry, one further thing on Lydia. When I was watching it this last time, I was thinking, golly, why is she getting herself further involved? I mean, she's such a nervous person. It just makes me nervous just watching her. I mean, I guess she's just a brilliant actress, but she's able to make me feel the anxiety that she feels sometimes when she's...
Right. Her character is very nervous. Even the one time when Hank shows up with the DEA and she looks down and she's wearing two different kinds of shoes.
Right.
Tell that herself was just very like, oh man, what am I doing?
Yeah. Right. So I was asking, like, man, why is she tells him in this very believable way, we can make a lot of money. And she pretends that she's not pretending. She's actually wheeling and dealing. She makes him shake on it. They're business partners. And I'm thinking, golly, woman, you're so far deep into this already, and you're probably making a lot of money, and we already know that she has used her money and played into her fears by trying to get one of Mike's guys to kill him. Why wouldn't Walt think she's going to try and find another hitman to go after him? Like, what's her motive? Is she really interested in getting more money, even though she's going to be incurring more danger and risk? And the only thing that I can think of is that she's so far in already that the only move left to her is to go further in, to get even more involved. I think we've talked about this image before, maybe, but Thomas Jefferson, during the Missouri Compromise, when country was debating whether or not to add Missouri as a slave state, and it's this big issue because the states are even free and slave, and it's ultimately resolved when Maine enters as a state, and they make Maine a free state and Missouri a slave state. But there's this letter that Jefferson writes when the Missouri Compromise happened, and he says, "We have the wolf by the ears. We can neither safely hold on nor safely let go." Regarding slavery, he knows this is going to end in bloodshed. Like, this is not a good way going forward. But that image came to mind when I was thinking about Lydia. She's got the wolf by the ears. She can't really let go. She's just got to hold on for dear life at this point and just pray to God that it's going to work out and she can ride this wolf, I guess, by the ears a little bit longer. So that's the only thing I could think of for her. And so she's a kind of a tragic case because we know that this can't end well for her. And then we remember she has a daughter too. So she's, the daughter is also kind of a innocent character in the background. But okay, so back to that scene. Yeah. When Walt is meeting with Todd's uncle and his guys, and Walt, we don't get to hear him explaining the plan to Walt. When we see the scene, Walt has already told them what he wants, and they're debating among themselves, how could we pull this off? And so then we see them come to Walt and like, okay, we can do this, but we can't do it the way that you want. And Walt just has unfounded confidence and says, no, you can do it exactly the way that I want. And we don't know what he's talking about at the time. And then afterwards we learn, like, you want to kill how many guys is it? 8 guys in 3 different prisons, all within the span of 2 minutes. Because they know if it gets out, if they kill one of them, then Hank's going to find out and he's going to lock down all the other guys in solitary confinement under guard. And of course, nobody ever dies when they're under solitary confinement under guard, unless they die by suicide, of course, which happens all the time.
Yeah, no, it was pretty brutal. And I think
that was a Jeffrey Epstein joke there, by the way.
Oh, yeah, got it.
He didn't.
I think it was actually 9 guys because they included the lawyer as well. He was the first one to get it, actually, in the phone line.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it was a pretty violent scene, but the way they do it with the music and everything was kind of intense. So,
yeah, with the watch going on Walt's watch.
Right. Walt knows exactly when it's going to happen and then when it's all done.
Yeah, he's just sipping his coffee, just like, guess it's starting now.
Yeah, 9 guys are getting brutally stabbed to death with, like,
I will say there was a part that I noticed.
Shanks.
He's taking a shower and the camera zooms in from the angle from seeing the top of the toilet where you see the Walt Whitman book.
Yes, right.
It focuses just a little bit on that earlier in this episode, kind of foreshadowing a little bit.
Yeah. So then Hank finds out, and there's been so many times when Hank has felt like he's at the cusp of winning everything, and then he's completely foiled. And so he comes back home dumbfounded. And Walt is there visiting Holly. And I don't know if that was a good idea. You'd think Walt would maybe want to just kind of be absent, but I don't think he can help himself. And so when Hank comes in and he's kind of distraught and he's pouring himself a drink, Walt, I think he kind of wants to brag a little bit. He wants to be like, "Yeah, so what? Something wrong, Hank? I don't understand. Why you feeling so? You acting kind of strange."
There's probably like 50% like curious and 50% bragging. You're probably right.
Yeah, right. So he's just gloating in a way, sort of like, "Yeah, I just completely outsmart you guys." So then, Hank has this. I really like these Hank Walt moments, and we get a lot of these. When Hank kind of opens up to him, or Walt pretends to open up to Hank, and they're having a drink.
Let me get you some coffee.
That's right.
Yeah, they're very awkward.
Yeah, because they're brothers-in-law. They're not they want to have a good relationship, but it's not really natural. And okay, so Hank tells him this story about a job he used to have, tagging trees. And what's going on there? Why does he tell him that story, you think?
Well, at the end, he says tagging trees is a hell of a lot better than tracking monsters. So I think what he just came across was something that he hasn't really encountered in his career, or maybe it's towards the high end of like the high end of just brutality that he's come across, where things don't always work out the way you planned.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of when Hank was out in El Paso, I guess, and
right
with Tortuga, and all that. I mean, Hank's a tough guy. He's seen a lot, but then stuff happens and he's like, "Whoa, I've never seen anything like that," and it kind of shakes him a little bit. But he has this whole. I guess his point is, I could have just done that for the rest of my life, and it would have been peaceful. Taking walks in the woods and tagging trees and just kind of communing with nature, gliding over it all, you might say. And then I love it. Walt responds with, "Well, I used to enjoy going camping."
Yeah.
Which I guess
I used to love going camping.
Yeah, being in nature, it's great. Used to do that too. Well, got to be going. I mean, he really is gloating, I think, in a way.
Yeah, and it fast forwards right to just him and Todd cooking.
Yeah, right. And they're just cranking. They're just cranking the blue meth, and there's no stopping them, I guess, now. And we
don't really know how much time has gone by, because you see that it's being shipped overseas, and they're just going through the methylamine at this point.
Yeah, right. And I kind of wish there was a scene in the Czech Republic of like the cops finding it and being like, "What in the world is this?" And like, and then somebody getting back to Hank, like, "You won't believe what just showed up in the Czech Republic," something like that. But we don't get that, at least not yet. Maybe it'll come later. I can't remember. Anyway, so yeah, like you said, we don't know how much time passes, but it seems like there's no problems, there's no issues. Everybody's winning on that side, and Jesse's not a part of it. Todd's, he's really committed himself. Seems to have really figured it all out. And then it shifts back to Hank and Marie's house, and Skylar's there visiting Holly, and this is, there are a couple scenes. I mean, Marie is kind of crazy, but there are a couple scenes where Marie in the show, Marie comes off as very sane and totally normal, and she catches Skylar off guard, because Skylar has a whole act that she's psychologically, distraught, and that's why the kids need to be at Hank and Marie's. And Marie catches Skylar kind of happy and totally fine.
Usually it's the first time I've seen you smile in a while.
Yeah, but she approaches the whole thing, I thought, in a really respectful, mature way. She's like, "Hey, Hank and I have been talking." And I mean, you and I both have kids. It's exhausting having kids, and especially if they're not yours, and like, they're older and you're not prepared, you don't have all the stuff. It's got to be tough. But Marie doesn't. She's very clear. Like, no. I think it's time for the kids to go back, not because we're tired of your kids, though that was probably part of it. But she's like, "We really don't want to be enabling you." And I thought that's kind of a mature thing to say. Like, we don't want you to grow dependent on us. We want you guys to mature back into a place where you can have your kids and everything's fine. And I just, well, Cheers,
And you
Marie.
can tell
That
that
was a good
at
move.
that point, Skylar hadn't even thought about this life ending. She just was going through the motions.
Yes.
It was
Right.
like I am in this until Walt dies or has decides not to do this anymore. And
Yeah.
at that point, he has not decided not to do it anymore.
Well, and remember too that scene when Walt and Skylar are kind of fighting and arguing about, okay, well, if you do that, then I'm going to do this, and then the kids will go there, but then they're going to do this. And Walt's point was like, that's not a long-term game. Like, you can't win that way. Like, eventually, it's going to not make any sense for the kids to be at Hank and Marie's, and he's right. And here it is. It's reached that point, and so Skylar knows it too, that they've got to come back. And so Skylar doesn't really know what to do. So she, this was odd to me. This scene was interesting, right? She takes Walt to a storage unit and shows him a ginormous pile of cash. And she says, yeah, I gave up trying to count it. There's no way I could launder it. Not if I had 100 car washes, or something. And it's a crescendo. It's a high point. It's a hinge. It's something. It's the peak of something in the show, because Walt has a kind of moment where, remember, he said, "I'm not in the money business. I'm in the empire business." And I think what he was looking at in that stack of cash was, "This is my empire. I've won. I've beat everyone.
Yeah,
and now I can hang it up."
there's a lot to unpack in that scene. First off, when Skylar approaches Walt, he's just sitting out by the pool by himself in this lonely, like, despair look.
Right.
And you're wondering, how long has this life been going on where
Right. We have no idea.
Zero relationship with each other, and this is what they do when they're not working per se. And then you're right. And then it goes there, and he then makes the comment like, "How much is this?" And she's like, "I have no earthly idea." And it makes you think back to when all he needed was $737,000.
Wow.
And you're wondering if that went into his head, and now he has more money than he's ever seen or will be able to spend in his entire life.
Yeah.
And I think that is what pushes him to, we'll get to it, but for him finally saying, "I'm out."
Yeah. Well, as she says, how big does it need to get? And she says, ultimately, I don't want any of this money. She says, all I want is for my kids back.
Right.
And she said, I want to know how much is enough so that we can go back to a life where they have their kids safely. Because she knows she does want her kids back, and she knows she can't, the Hank and Marie solution isn't going to work anymore. And she's able to persuade Walt, which is huge. Like, that doesn't happen, I don't think, much, very often, at least for a long time, that Skylar is able to have a persuasive power over Walt. But he's confronted with the logic, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right. Time to hang it up." So now let's just off ramp real gently. Let's just land this plane, and we'll just figure out how to spend some of this money, and we'll just live happily ever after with our kids, and everything's going to look fine. And there's also a scene where he's washing his hands at a bathroom. I don't remember where it is, but he looks at the paper towel dispenser, and it's dented. Am I right? He punched it, right? Didn't he punch it
right after he found out that he was in remission? Because he had lived this life with, quote unquote, no fear, because he was going to die. And then he found out that he's actually going to live. And so there was that, like, anger and not know how to respond to, but I've been putting myself in this position to do all these things, and now I didn't even need to do it, but I'm enjoying this new life, and I'm good at it. And
so what do you think he thought when he saw that dented paper towel dispenser?
Probably just, what does he say in the beginning of the show, where he's explaining chemistry? It's the growth and decay, and it's the study of change. And you got to think that when he looks at that, you kind of see how he's progressed throughout his last, few years.
Wow.
Just my thought.
Yeah, well, there's something that happens. It clicks then. Like Skylar plants the seed, and then he looks at that paper towel dispenser, and he's like, "Yep, no, it's time." So then he goes over to Jesse's, and remember the last time he saw Jesse, he was like, "There's no we, like it's just me."
Right.
But he goes over to Jesse's, he knocks on the door, and it's a real awkward interaction. And then they slowly break the ice when Walt starts bringing up memories of their old RV, and they start laughing, and that's so key. It just breaks the ice, like I said, and they start. There's like a possibility for friendship once again between the two of them, and everything seems to be kind of reconciled. And then they're like, "Oh, well, I gotta get going." Yeah, me too. I got stuff to do. Of course, neither of them actually does, but
Mm-hmm.
and then Walt says, "I left something for you on the porch," and he leaves. And Jesse goes out there, and there's his entire share, like 5 million, maybe more than that, in bags. And we're not really sure exactly what's going on in Jesse's mind, but something snaps. And we remember that the logic that Walt had laid out with him was, you can't have this money. This is blood money. If you want to get out because you don't think this is right, you can't really take this money. You certainly can't enjoy it because it's blood money. So then Walt goes home, now that he's kind of patched things up with Jesse and given back his money, and it's like, okay, I'm out. And the both of them have every expectation that life's just going to kind of go back to normal now. And we got to pause and just reflect on that. It's been a long time that Skylar and Walt have endured this. Cancer is sort of nowhere to be seen now. I remember at one point Skylar was just waiting for him to die. That doesn't appear to be happening. And so you just got to kind of pause and reflect on how momentous that was for them. To be there. Okay, we have great expectations now of rebuilding our lives and coming up with some crazy story to explain things. And we're just going to get back. It's going to be easy. It's going to be great. We're going to get back. And then the very next scene is Hank and Marie over at their house on the back deck. And everybody's happy. Did you notice that? Everybody's normal again. And Marie's not wearing purple.
Yeah.
Did you pick up on that?
I did see that. It was yellow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, she might have been wearing purple pants.
Yellow bracelet, too.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what that means, but that means something. When Marie's not wearing purple, something's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I noticed too that the sun's shining, the wine is flowing, everybody's happy, and it was just perfectly set up to kind of end happily ever after.
It was very similar to episode 1 of the season 1, where they're having a birthday party for Walt. Everyone's coming over. Everyone's just cheerful. I mean, he's still a little gloomy.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you see everyone just their happiness was just another level, and you always wondered what does life look like for Walt,
right,
post Heisenberg, and
yeah,
this is what it appears to be for a very small amount of time.
Yeah. So I mean, what does that mean? That means everything's back to normal, except Walt is no longer the same person. He's completely changed.
Right.
And then, of course, Hank goes in to use the bathroom and finds the copy of Leaves of Grass. And then it just focuses on him when he realizes what on earth. And it looks like he's figured it out, that Walt is Heisenberg.
I love that they did the flashback of when he's saying, Willy Wonka.
Yeah, right. Who is WW? Yeah.
Oh, you got me. And then
Walter White. Yeah.
It shows the GB, and his face, that look was just oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because he must have been in a place where he was once again thinking that case is all wrapped up and never going to be solved because all the key witnesses or whatever are gone, dead, and there's nothing he can do. And so
And you
He's
remember
got to
the
be.
very first episode of season 5 starts out with Walt with long hair and a beard, and he's meeting that guy to at the diner, and it's his birthday, and he opens up the trunk, and there's a machine gun in there.
Oh yeah.
And then it goes right back to where
And we've still don't. That's a piece of the puzzle we still have no idea.
That was just a small piece that they showed, and then it went right back to the end of season 4 type of timeline. And so, if you remember that through these first 8 episodes of season 5, you knew
We know
at
somehow
some
it's got to go there.
Yeah, at some point things go bad, or things take a drastic left turn.
Yeah. Right.
And
yeah,
so,
I completely forgotten about that scene.
right, but that's the brilliance of Vince Gilligan. He does something like that at the beginning of episodes or seasons, and you completely forget about it. The train heist episode literally starts with the kid driving his motorcycle around and gets a tarantula, and then it goes into the whole train heist, and you completely forget about the kid, and then the kid shows at the very end, and Todd shoots him. It's just like. Just really, really, just brilliant writing and directing. It's great.
Yeah.
So if you remember that, you knew it was going to take a turn.
Yeah. No. Shows turn sometimes. They take a turn.
They do.
Okay. Well, before we kind of close it out, I just wanted to kind of reflect on all the different things that Hank's probably processing in that moment. He's got to be excited, right? Maybe he's found the guy. He's found a giant lead. Maybe he's got to be feeling this. Oh my gosh, I've been played this whole time. What an idiot I am. He's got to feel great apprehension about the fact that he's got to feel betrayed, right? Like this guy who's pretended to be his brother-in-law and his friend and confidant, and the guy he's literally been watching his kids for him. There's probably part of him too that doesn't want it to be true.
Yeah. I mean, literally, you said all the above, all of that probably going through his head right now. And some of it's probably like, how did I not see this before?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and there may be more things that are going through his head, but certainly those things. And that's a lot. So we are not going to take a year-long break. We're going to dive right into the next episode here. So thanks everybody for sticking with us this far. We're going to now enter the last part of the last season with our next episode. So, all the things like, share, subscribe, all the things we say, we always mean it. So I know I'm personally very eager to find out what happens the next time we get together and break into the next episode of Breaking Bad.